The wind rose from the plains, rattling the tin roofs of the small mountain hamlet of Barakirov as dusk settled over the jagged peaks. The scent of pine mingled with the faint odor of smoke drifting from the last hearths that still clung to life. Children, flushed from an evening of hide-and-seek, were ushered inside by their mothers, while old men hunched over cracked wooden tables, sipping bitter tea and murmuring about the harvest. It was a night like any other, except for the fleeting whisper that seemed to thread through the rustling branches, a soft susurrus that no one could quite place. Tasha, a teenage girl with quick eyes and an even quicker mind, paused at the doorway of the communal well. She pressed her palm against the cool stone and felt a tremor, almost too subtle to notice, travel up the shaft. She turned to her brother, Nikolai, who was polishing his hunting knife. "Did you feel that?" she asked, voice barely louder than the crackle of the fire. Nikolai snorted. "Probably a bad wind, Tash. Don't get weird ideas now, the elders will have us locked up if we start chasing ghosts again." Tasha smirked, but the feeling lingered. She tossed a pebble into the well, watching it plummet into darkness. The sound of its splash seemed oddly muffled, swallowed by an invisible veil. The village clock, a hand-carved piece of walnut perched on the church tower, struck 9, once, twice, thrice, each toll echoing with a hollow resonance that seemed to reverberate through the stone walls. Just beyond the edge of the settlement, the forest loomed in a deep, impenetrable green. Generations of Barakirov folk had told stories of the forest's sentient roots, of lights that appeared at midnight to lure wanderers, and of voices that mimicked lost loved ones. Tonight, a faint amber glow flickered between the trunks, like distant lanterns bobbing on a sea of leaves. The next morning, the sun rose with prying gold fingers, painting the rooftops in a hopeful hue. But the village was strangely quiet. The doors stood ajar, but there were no footsteps on the cracked dirt path, no clatter of simmering pots, no rustle of laundry hanging on the line. The hearths, once animated by dancing flames, now held only cold ash. At the well, the rope used to draw water dangled limp, its bunched ends frayed as if some unseen hand had grasped it and withdrawn. Tasha, drawn by an instinct she could not explain, ran to the church. The bells, which had rung at sunrise all week, hung motionless, their brass plates tarnished but still gleaming. Inside, the altar was covered in a thin layer of dust, but beneath it lay a single, freshly turned page from the village ledger. In bold ink it read, "The covenant activates at sunrise." She turned, heart hammering against her ribs, to find the council elder, Grandfather Mikhail, sitting on the wooden bench, eyes vacant, his hands clasped around a tarnished silver amulet. "You should not have looked, child," he rasped, his voice a cracked echo that seemed to carry an ancient weight. "The pact was never meant for us to break." Tasha's mind raced. The covenant, a pact forged centuries ago when Barakirov's founders promised protection to a spirit that dwelt beneath the mountains, in exchange for offering a portion of their harvest each year. The legend said that if the covenant was ignored, the spirit would reclaim the village. Yet they never believed it was true. They had modern tools, iron plows, and a school that taught the youth about physics, not folklore. A sudden crash reverberated through the wooden beams as the ceiling cracked. Dust fell like snow, and a gaping hole opened above the altar, revealing a dark cavity descending into the earth. From the fissure, an unseen current of cold air rushed out, carrying with it the faint smell of moss and ancient stone. Grandfather Mikhail's fingers tightened around the amulet, which pulsed a dull, greenish glow. "It awakens," he whispered, his eyes now a bright, unnatural amber. "The spirit demands its due." At that moment, a chorus of whispers rose, as if hundreds of voices rose from the cavern below, each echoing the names of dead ancestors. Tasha felt a pressure lift her off her feet, a sensation of being pulled downward, toward the yawning chasm. Yet before she could succumb, a gust of wind surged from the forest outside, blasting open the shattered ceiling and scattering the congregation of dust into spiraling vortices. The wind was no ordinary breeze, it was alive with flecks of golden light, an ethereal glow that seemed to carve shapes in the air, hands reaching out, faces smiling. Nikolai, who had followed his sister, appeared at the edge of the opening, clutching a hand-carved wooden spear. He shouted, "Tasha! Hold on!" She grasped a nearby beam with trembling fingers as the wind wrapped around her, cushioning the fall. In a heartbeat, the massive stone slab that blocked the entrance to the forest fell away, revealing a glowing pathway of bioluminescent fungi and crystal formations that stretched deep into the mountains. Grandfather Mikhail, now fully awakened, lifted the amulet aloft. The green glow surged, expanding outward like ripples on a pond. The air thickened, and the fire that once burned in the hearths flared anew, casting a warm, amber hue across the shattered nave. The spirit does not want to destroy us, the elder croaked, voice now steadier. It merely seeks the balance we have taken for granted. He spoke of a pact written in the old tongue, a covenant that demanded a tribute of not just grain but of stories, memories shared, songs sung, and the living presence of the villagers themselves. By abandoning tradition, the village had unknowingly broken the balance, and the ancient spirit had risen to claim the void. Tasha, though shaken, understood now. She whispered, "We can renegotiate. Let us give our stories instead of our harvest. Let the world hear what we have become." The spirit, a luminous veil that rippled at the edge of reality, hovered above the cavern. It listened, its form shifting like vapor under moonlight. Then, with a soft sigh, the green light of the amulet dimmed, and the cavern walls glistened with dew, as if the spirit had blinked. When the wind finally settled, the village of Barakirov was no longer a place of silence. The doors creaked open, light poured from the windows, and villagers emerged, blinking at the strange daylight. Grandfather Mikhail, now frail but serene, placed the amulet back on his chest, his eyes reflecting both the newfound peace and the lingering mystery of the ancient covenant. The story of the vanishing village spread far beyond the mountains. Scholars trekked to Barakirov, eager to record the testimonies of those who survived. Tasha wrote their accounts, weaving together the night's terror and the hope that followed. The village never again ignored the old ways, but they also never allowed fear to dominate their hearts. Instead, they celebrated the balance between progress and remembrance, honoring each generation's voice. Years later, as tourists traced the glowing pathway that led into the mountain's heart, they often claimed they could hear faint songs carried on the wind, lullabies, war chants, children's laughter, echoing from the ancient spirit's realm. The amulet, now displayed in the village hall, vibrated faintly on stormy nights, a reminder that the line between myth and reality is often thinner than the thinnest leaf. Barakirov remained, not merely a hamlet perched on a ridge, but a living lesson, that every pact, however old, is a conversation, and that the stories we tell are just as vital as the grain we sow. The night the village vanished taught them that the true magic lies not in avoiding darkness, but in learning to share the light. By the time the sun set on that fateful day, the star-filled sky above Barakirov seemed brighter, as if the heavens themselves were watching, waiting for the next story to unfold.